Welcome to the first of two tutorials that's going to help you replicate this diagram here. And as we replicate this diagram, we're going to learn a little bit about printing sizes and also just some of the very basics of using Adobe Illustrator. Now the first thing you need to do is open Illustrator. Obviously it looks a little different on your computer, but I've got it there, CS 5.1. When we jump into Illustrator, you'll see that this is what the default view looks like, and what we need to do is create a new file, so there's nothing to work on at the moment. So I go File, New. What comes up here is very important, and we need to fill this out correctly, or otherwise you're setting up your document wrong. It's very important in whatever program you do, you start right, otherwise you're making your life very hard in the long run. So I would call this, perhaps paper sizes or something like that. Number of artboards, that's if you're doing more than one image or more than one poster. So we only want one artboard, and then that would have been for the spacing. So if you want to work on what we say is multiple canvases, you can up your artboard, say what sort of order you want them in as well. Now the size down here, A4, that's pretty standard. All that A4 is it makes a little box for us to start from when we're making our working from our canvas. So we'll leave it for A4. You can go outside the box, as you'll see, and it's just there as a bit of a guideline. So we want it 210 wide by 297 high, and you can see that when we look down here, A4 210 by 297, and that's that little box there. So that's a good starting place for us to go with. The bleed, don't worry about that at the moment. The orientation there is if you just wanted portrait or landscape. So we go to portrait, and then we can click OK. You will see here that now we've got like a nice A4 piece of paper. To zoom in and zoom out, I'll teach you Control minus and Control plus. They're probably the easiest ways to do it on your keyboard, and you can see that it's zooming in and zooming out, so have a go of that. So this here is an A4 sort of piece of paper, I guess. So what we want to do is make sure that all our settings are right. So what we can do is we've just done our document setup, but we can check our preferences. And one of the things we want to do is check our units. So they're in millimeters, which is great. If you want to work in centimeters, you can do that. If you wanted to work in pixels or points, you can also do that. I like working in millimeters because it's quite accurate. With the stroke and the type, so when we have like text, we want to make sure it's in points, because it would be strange saying that a text is 30 mil high. We're used to saying it's size 14 points or size 18 points or size 10 for your essay. So just leave those as they are. So we can see this is A4, and we need to replicate this diagram here. So all we've got at the moment is that tiny little box. Now over here is a number of tools. I'm going to show you just a couple of them, just some of the basics, but this one here is how we draw a line, so I'll show you that right now. Now there's two ways of drawing a line. You can left click and drag, as you can see, and it creates a line like so. Another way is to, we'll undo that one there, it's continuing on, is to just single click, and it will come up asking you what sort of length do you want for your line. So if I just said I wanted a line that was 20 centimeters and I wanted it vertical, or I can choose my angle, I can press OK. So you can see there, and using my black arrow, which is my simple moving arrow, I can move those lines around. Now if I'm not happy with one of the lengths of those lines, I can go back up here and I can change them. So I can say I want that line from the left side to the right side to be moved over, 9 centimeters, or I want, the certain width or the height of my letter to be moved over as well, and you'll see that that will change the width of it. So I can say I want it 20 centimeters, and it will stretch my line. I can say for the height I want it at 0. What's that going to do? It's going to make my line flat, because it's not going to have any height anymore. So you can see that there. You can also rotate it by sort of hovering over on the left hand side. When you hold shift, it keeps it at a nice 45-degree angle as well. So you can do that with all lines. You just go up to the little box and you can turn it. So that's just simply creating lines. We're not going to make this diagram with the lines, but it's still a good little tool to know, because we're going to use boxes to save us drawing 4 lines to make a box. delete that. So the first box, again, I can click and drag, that you can see there, and it has my width and my height, and then I can click on it and I can modify it up here. Or to start with, I can just click a little box, left click, and it'll say how big do you want your box. We're going to make an A4 box to start with, which is this little guy here, and we say we want him to be 210 by 297, so we type that in, and that will fit exactly over this box here. Now the next thing we need to do is either make one bigger, so make this box that sits in here, this box that sits in here, or one of those ones there. So let's make the A2 box. So the A2 box is 420 by 594. And I press enter. I'm just going to control minus to zoom out. And you can see I've made that box there. So what I'm going to do is now just move this box and line him up nicely next to my other box. So you can see that we've got two. I know that A4 one looks a bit bolder because that's our working canvas, but as you'll see as we create some of the other ones, it'll start to fit in nicely. So A3, 297 by 420, so we'll pop that in. This time I'll show you how to do it like this. So I make a box, click on it, and I'll say that I want it to be 297 by 420, and you can see that that's made an A3 box. Now when we look at our A3 box, I've popped it the wrong way, so all I need to do is just hold shift as we come up on the corner, and now we've got it in the correct view. So I'm then going to drag that one down so it intersects in here, and you can start to see now that we've got those light coloured boxes. Now to thicken up those boxes, we've got a thing called a stroke. So I'll explain that very shortly. I might just pop one more little box in. So our little A5 box over here, which is 148 by 210. And I want you to do this as well. I think the width is 210 and the height will be 148. We've got that little box there, and we're going to pop him in. Now you can see when it comes up with the little green bits, that's a little helper saying there's a path or it's going to intersect and join up. Another way that we could create our boxes is to actually use our rulers. So you press Ctrl R to bring up a ruler, and you can see there that you've actually got control, and we can divide sort of pieces of paper into halves as well. So we can create rulers to create some of our lines for ourselves. So that's Ctrl R. If you want those to disappear, your ruler lines, you need to hold down Control and press like the double dot letter on your keyboard. I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's a colon or a semicolon. It's next to the L on most of your keyboard. So you press that if you just want to get rid of those blue lines. But they can be quite helpful. So you can see if you wanted to, and we knew that this was 210, so 0 to 210, and for whatever reason I want to divide that in half, I can bring my little ruler over until I know it's on 105, so it's right in the middle there. You can see that, so I just move it over a tiny bit, and then that is dividing my A4 piece of paper into 4 little squares. So that's one way you can do it to help you line things up. Now we've got a number of boxes starting to look like this diagram over here, the bottom part of it. Haven't done that tiny bit in the corner for the different paper sizes. We want to thicken up the stroke. So the stroke is what we call the outline of a line, but there's also a fill when you're making a box. So you can see down here the stroke is black. I then go over to this over here, and we change the weight. So remember that's in points, not millimeters. So you can see that I'm thickening up the stroke. So I could, choose up to 60, which is way too much, but I would probably just choose something like 7 would be fine, and I'll probably go and do that, and you can shift click to multiple select and do it for a couple of items. You can see now that we've got 7 there. So what we've got is a number of boxes that are all looking the same now, and what we need to do is work out, well, do I want to change the colour? It'll probably look neater if they're all the same, but when you click on this little fella up here, or you bring out your little colour board, you can see this is where our colours are. So I could make that box green, I could make this one light blue, I could make this one purple or a darker blue, and this one could be like a pinky colour. So you can see that there. Now, one thing that is happening at the moment is the black from our little artboard, our original canvas, is getting in the way, so I'm just going to move that so that you can see when you press spacebar. Another tip, that's our panning tool, so you can move things around, and you'll be able to see if I move this a bit higher and we now zoom in, even though it's off our artboard, that's okay, because when we save we sort of choose our selection and we put it into another format to get the final result anyway. So you can see I've created a number of those boxes and they're all different colour. If I want to make them all the same colour, I just click up on my stroke and say they're all black. So that's what we need to do. The next thing is we could colour our boxes in, so you can click on your box and this is what we call the fill colour. You know, I could make this one a light blue, I could make this one a green, this one down here purple, and this one the pink colour. So we're starting to replicate that diagram, making it a little bit more interesting, giving it some colour. So that's the first part of the tutorial. So I want you to go and replicate all the boxes, but don't put any text on yet. And the second tutorial is going to take you through just some of the basic text editing features in Illustrator. So once you're up to that, save your work as you go, it's very important, and then open up the next tutorial.